so if we can, let's fast forward to today. Extremely successful, huge podcast, doing great as the note guy. I might have just created you a new title, but yeah, I mean, you're an expert at notes. So just shine a light on exactly what it is that you guys do as of today, and how the business works, and how it's performing in 2025's market.
So the last 24 months, the business has really started to blossom up again with a lot of distressed stuff. We all know foreclosures on the commercial side have been rampant. We're seeing people struggling to pay their mortgages on the residential side. About 1 in 9 borrowers across the country are more than 90 days behind with their mortgages. That tells you anything. They're literally in default already. And we're seeing foreclosures rise because of the default. Well, that works well for what we're doing as note investors, because we buy that distressed debt and we buy it at a huge discount, sometimes 50, 60 cents on the dollar, or sometimes pennies on the dollar, depending on what's going on with the asset. And so we buy that debt literally, then we become the lender, we become the bank. The borrower still owes the same amount, even though we picked it up at 50 cents of the dollar. And so we make our money, Eric, by reaching back out to the homeowner and say, hey, Eric, you haven't paid your mortgage in 6 months. What's going on? What happened? Did you get sick with COVID? Did you get divorced? Did your mama get run over by a reindeer? What's going on with that? Lose your job? Whatever. Do you want to stay or do you want to go? Can you start making payments on time? Do we need to adjust payments and stuff like that? So that's what we do. I always joke. I've rehabbed enough properties in my life. I don't want to do that. So we basically buy this distressed debt from banks, lenders. And instead of rehabbing the property, we're rehabbing the borrower. And that's how we do it. Because if we can get them to stay in the house and start making payments, it's usually going to be a double-digit return to us to keep them in the property, whether it's a residential, commercial property. If they don't want to stay in the house, and we can work some sort of liquidation strategy. If they don't want to work with us and think they can live for free, I'm sorry, we're just going to foreclose and take the property back because we're the lender with the same rights. So that's kind of what our ball game is, and we're seeing much more product come across our desk. We've seen nonstop residential defaults buying a lot of stuff. We've also seen a lot of commercial stuff, but we've seen a lot more distressed multifamily apartment loans coming across our desk in the last 12 months than we've seen in a long time. So pretty excited about what the future holds for us right now.
Okay. And so how are you guys going about getting these leads? And so us as multifamily commercial guys, we deal with brokers for the most part. We may go off market, go direct to the seller. But for the most part, it's one or the other. How do you guys go about locating solid note investments to go after?
So every bank out there, if it's a federally chartered bank with FDIC insurance, they've got to file a quarterly report with the FDIC. And in that quarterly report, Eric, they have to disclose what type of mortgage debt they have in default, whether it's residential, commercial. So it's kind of like reading the tea leaves. We can go and download a report that outlines every bank and what their distress, commercial, residential, even multifamily stuff is. And then we just start targeting those banks for whatever asset class we're wanting to target. So if we want multifamily, I could just pull this list and go down the list and see, okay, who's got distressed multifamily? Let's go to LinkedIn, which is free, and start targeting specific job titles on LinkedIn. So you're not going to call the customer service department. They're just going to tell you go pound sand. You're not going to walk in the local Bank of America and try to buy a note. They'll escort you out. But you do target specific titles called special asset managers, secondary marketing managers, whole loan traders, or chief credit risk officers when you get to smaller banks and stuff like that. So that's what we've done. Instead of having a dial for dollars like we used to, we just jump on LinkedIn and have reached out to these asset managers, different lenders, and made relationships with them. So when they do have something, they'll send us a list. And that's what I love is a lot of our banks and lenders are sending us lists on a quarterly basis. Here's what we've got non-performing this month we're looking to get rid of. Here's a deal that we're looking to get rid of this quarter, And so that's the smart thing that I've always liked is that we're not spending a dime on direct mail campaigns or anything like that, but we're literally direct to the lenders, and the bank always gets paid. And our goal isn't necessarily to chase the property like a lot of people. It's actually to chase the debt, knowing that if we buy the debt, buy like this loan file right here in our property, we're technically controlling the property. So if the borrower won't play ball, we'll take the property. If the borrower will play ball, that's a great thing because now I own a performing asset, a reperforming asset at a huge discount, turning into a huge deal for us. Does that make sense, Eric?
No, that's perfect. So just clarify for me briefly. Are you saying that when you take possession of the note, when you purchase the note from the bank, then you become the owner of the note and the actual real estate as well?
No. We're buying the debt. We're becoming the bank. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So we're the bank. Same thing. Instead of it being Bank of America, it's a Bank of Scott Carson, right? We have the same rights. Now we just own that debt at a bigger discount. So let's just use some simple numbers behind it. Okay. Say you've got a small apartment complex. You owe $100,000 on it. You haven't paid it in a year. You owe 110. Okay. Well, I might come in and buy that debt at like 50 cents on the dollar. So I might pay $50K for it. Now I buy that note from ABC Bank. Okay. The borrower will get a letter. Hey, thank you for not paying us. Now you cannot pay Bank of Scott Carson, right? So my job, my team, my servicing companies will reach out to you and say, hey, Eric, we just bought your note. You now owe us the $110,000. How would you like to start paying, or how can we get you back on track? So if your interest rate was at 6% on a $100,000 mortgage, and I paid $50,000 for it, and you now start paying on time because you've gotten through this, bad situation or whatever like that, that's a 12% cash and cash return to me if you just start paying on time again. If you start catching up and start bringing, a couple months to the table or pay a little bit extra each month, that can easily become a high teens, 20% cash on cash return. I've never owned the property, right? You can still operate that property. Now, if you don't play ball with me, then I can go through the legal process of foreclosing to take the property back through like a cash for keys. Or if you won't play ball, we have the legal right to foreclose and either sell it at the auction, or if it doesn't sell at the auction, we now take it back as an REO. But remember, it's worth 100. I'm into it at 50. So I sell it at auction for 90 grand. I take technically like a 20 grand paper loss, but I still made $40,000, $50,000,
Yeah. And so at any point in time, so after they foreclose, let's say they do decide to just go rogue on you and not pay. And you decide that, hey, I want to take possession of this property because it's a really nice property. I've got experience in managing multifamily apartment complexes. Is there ever a point that you can take possession of that property physically and start managing it, or either get a third party property manager to manage it?
So in every commercial mortgage, we have, if once a borrower defaults, we have the right to take over rents, start collecting rents directly.
Okay. That's
a beautiful thing about commercial loans. Plus, we can accelerate the debt to a default rate, usually at 18%. Okay. So it goes from a 6%, 7%. If you're not going to play ball, the rate can go up to 18 or more in some cases. So it takes away a lot of the borrowers fighting us because, they're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul and other things. And then I'm going to say to them, like, listen, if you're not going to play ball with us, let's just have you deed the property over to us. We'll forgive you the debt and let you walk, and then we'll operate and own the property. Or if I don't necessarily want to own it and take it back, we may end up just selling it at the foreclosure auction at a price that makes sense for somebody else to come take it over.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you guys, it sounds like you got about 4 to 5 different exit strategies in there that you guys could capitalize on. And so it makes a lot of sense. And the easier and the cleaner is to just get in and out and, selling at a foreclosure auction or something like that. If that is your choice of exit strategy.
The best bang for the buck is actually to work with the borrowers most of the time. Because we're buying at a big discount. Now we got cash flow. Now we got money coming in. And after 12 months of on-time payments, that note is reconsidered as performing. I could turn around and sell that performing note back to Wall Street or other funds at, say, 80, 90 cents on the dollar for somebody who wants like a 7 or 8% return. So we do that a lot. Actually buy the stuff, work it out with a borrower, get them paying on time, have them bring a little bit of extra skin in the game or something like that in the front end, and then sell that asset off as a performing note in 12 or 24 months without ever owning the property, without ever putting any dollars into fixing it up or any legal costs and having to foreclose.
Okay, sweet. Okay, and so is there a strategy that would be or equate towards what us multifamily guys like to call our value add? So buying it at 50% on the dollar, obviously that's a value add. But what is the school of thought when you're looking for something to be considered a value add?
So a value add is something that obviously that we can buy at the right price. And if we do take it back, looking at what the cash flow is, what's the current cash flow coming in, NOI coming in off of what's that equate to an ROI based off what we bought the note, the operation, because our cost base is a whole lot less. We don't have to worry about paying a 9% interest rate because we bought it at 50 cents on the dollar. You know what I mean? So those are things we look at. Hey, is it going to be good for us to take the property back and hold it for cash flow, or take it back and actually own and operate it? We'll give some cash for keys to the bars, but it's also looking at what kind of capital improvements the property has. Is it in good condition? Is it bad condition? And evaluating those things. What's the vacancy factor? Like, I'll give you an example. I was looking at a 75 unit down in Corpus Christi. I could buy it really cheap. And then I also found out that there was a fire that affected 20 of the units in the unit, in the complex. Like, well, that's obviously why their cash flow dried up, and have they put any work into getting this done, into getting it back up and running? And how long is it going to take to rehab if we take the property back? So yeah, we evaluate the asset with the idea, like, you never buy a note on a property you don't want to end up owning, right? So if it's a property that we don't want to own, I don't want to buy the note for the most part. But if it is something I don't mind owning and operating and putting our management team in place there to fix it up and do some of that stuff, yeah, it's just like anything else like that. But the thing that most people have it hard in their head is like, I want to own the property. Well, no, you maybe don't want to own the property. The note business might be actually better for you because you're doing stuff without having to actually own the property and still make good cash flow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so if you could just give me the X's and O's of how you guys go about raising debt for a deal, and how do you structure things? I know that you're looking at the cash on cash returns. Are you guys looking at IRRs? Are you doing a fund model? How are you guys going about structuring the acquisition and the raising of capital for these notes?
Yeah, so if we have to raise the full capital for it, yeah, we have a fund model. So basically, people invest with us. We'll give them a flat rate return and a percentage of the back end. Usually it's no greater than 50-50. So basically, if they're getting a pref, we'll take a look at the total cash flow, the profit, and that'll be taken away from a 50% of the profits, and they'll get the remainder of that. We're going to take 50% on our end because we're finding such good deals and doing a lot of the operations. Sometimes when the bank will finance the purchase of the note, usually they'll do like 80%, sometimes 75%, even sometimes they'll do a whole 100% financing of that note. In those cases, we may just bring on an individual investor to partner with us on that deal, depending on what that purchase price is, or the mezzanine financing that we'll need to handle the purchase acquisition side. And then we may, depend on the investor and what we're doing, we may just do a complete equity split, 50-50 split of profits on it.
Okay. And how long are you typically holding these notes? Just curious.
So we don't usually like to hold them longer than 3 to 4 years. Sometimes we'll go to 5. But usually it's, okay, the biggest bang for the buck that we see is in that 12 to 36 a month model for us. As long as they've been paying on time, they paid 12 months on time, they brought some skin in the game. We've kind of regentrified the asset, stabilized it, got rents up and stuff like that. That takes, it doesn't happen overnight. That can take 12 to 24 months in a lot of cases. So that's where we see the biggest bang for the buck is that 24 to 36 basis. And then it's also too, look at the cash flow. What's the ROI? If the ROI is through the roof and we're doing it and it's just printing money because we bought it so cheap, we may hold on to it for a period of time. But usually, especially with a fund model, it's usually, okay, we're going to pick something up at 3 years, evaluate it, and then kind of go from there.
Okay, sweet. Well, Scott, I know initially before we went live, I asked you to think about a deal to share with the Moonlight audience. So if you could just share some general details, how you guys went about locating a portfolio or either a specific note, how you guys funded it, and where you guys are in the process or if you've exited already.
So this is a deal that we're literally working on right now. We're really excited about it. We got a list in of 20 multifamily notes. They're kind of smaller balance stuff or smaller unit stuff. There's the biggest unit number is a 78 unit in Indianapolis, Indiana. And based on the numbers, it's valued at about $5.5 million. It's actually 4 buildings over 3.2 acres. And it was a mezzanine loan. So the borrower on this took out a loan and borrowed the money to buy it and rehab it. Well, we all know what happened with interest rates, right? Their interest rate went from a 6.25% to 6.5% is up to 18% now because they haven't made a payment. So it's at a huge default rate. Okay. Now the unpaid balance on the mortgage is about $3.25 million. So we made a bid at 75 cents of the dollar of that $3.5 million. So our bid was right about 2.2, 2.5. Forgive me. I don't have the numbers in front of me. And the lender today said they're willing to accept if we counter up about $100,000. I'm like, okay, done. Let's do it. The goal with this is now we're in that due diligence period, and we'll have basically 90 days to evaluate rent rates, all that stuff, cash flow, expenses. They've got on-site management that's renting out one of the units, which is kind of unique. I don't think they're doing a very good job. And so we're in the process of doing all that stuff. But based on if we buy that note at that price and we take it to foreclosure, which is what we're probably going to have to do, because there's about $1.5 million in mezzanine or junior liens and other liens on the property, because this borrower hasn't paid their vendors over last year either. So we're going to have to take this to foreclosure. If we sell at the auction for what we think we get it, it's $1 million profit. If we take it back and don't sell at the auction, at least we'll clean up and get rid of those secondary liens on the property. And now we'll have an operating property that we figure is going to be somewhere around a 15% cash and cash return, just based on rent or NOI on top of what we're paying for the note. So it's not a bad little deal, but those, we're also working on a 10 unit. We're working on a 33 unit in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The 10 unit is a converted school in Wisconsin. It's kind of a cool property. That's fully rehabbed and fully leased for 10 units, but the borrower on that just can't keep up with the 18% default rate. So we're going to step into about a 20% cash flow on that deal in Wisconsin.
Yeah, those sounds like some really good deals that you guys got going there. And so as you were running that down with the 78 unit, you said that there were vendor liens on it, on the specific asset there. How do you go about learning the ins and outs of those liens and how to get things off? Where would a person go to discover this type of information?
Well, so whenever you're buying a property, there's two things that you should do on every property you're looking at buying. Double check your value. It's a little bit more difficult in commercial than a residential, but still pulling comps, having a professional. And then pull title. Look at what title and liens are in a property. So we order what's called a two-owner title report, which is an ownership and encumbrances is what it's called. And that gives us a breakdown of what liens are on the property. Who it's to, what's it kind of for, when it was recorded, stuff like that. So you'll order that and you can see, okay, these liens are on here. So if there's all these liens on the property, we can't just do it a friendly foreclosure. We literally need to go through the legal process of foreclosing on this asset to wipe out those other liens, because we're in the first lien position. So if a first lien is foreclosing, it's going to wipe out everything except taxes and usually utility liens for the most part.
So basically, it's almost like filing bankruptcy. And the only thing that doesn't get removed is IRS taxes, but all other debt can be washed. Is it pretty similar to that same scenario?
Well, so filing bankruptcy is a little bit different scenario than a foreclosure. A bankruptcy, it's going to, a borrower is either going to try to modify, do a payment plan, or it's going to be a liquidation of the property, restructure. I actually love bankruptcies. Loan investors like bankruptcies because now we have an attorney to talk to and can structure a payment plan that makes sense for both parties. If it doesn't make sense in the BK file and stuff like that, we can ask for that, it'd be discharged and then finish the foreclosure. Or, like I said, talk with the borrower and say, listen, why are you filing foreclosure or why are you filing bankruptcy? Let's do a friendly foreclosure, or let's do a consent to consent to our judgment so we can foreclose out and wipe out these second liens and let you walk. So there's been times we've been able to talk people out of filing bankruptcy or finishing, going through the bankruptcy, because it made more sense for us to just take over the property and have it, come to Jesus meeting and say, hey, just walk. Don't put good money after bad money and you're in a bad deal. Let's just get you walking and we'll take over the asset.
Yeah, those are some strange words that you don't normally hear. I love bankruptcy. But, when you're knowledgeable like yourself and the ins and outs of notes and how to go about solving problems, bankruptcies can be an opportunity for you. So that's good that you've accrued the knowledge base that you have. So, Scott, we're going to turn the page and start wrapping things up. But before we do, if you could answer a few of my coaching questions, we got a portion of the show that we like to call our Moonlight coaching round. Typically, what we do is ask our guests a few questions. If you can hold your response between 1 to 2 minutes per response, that'd be great.
That's going to be tough, but yeah.
The first question I have for you is, what do you think every new real estate investor should know before investing in real estate?
Great question. Financing. You need to learn the difference between private money, hard money, financing from a bank. That's one of the most valuable questions you can understand, and especially about private money. What's available out there that you just don't have to go through? And most of the time, a lot of deals get funded with other people's money than going traditional bank financing. Don't let that stop you just because you've got a bad FICO score, you've had some issues in the past, or you don't have a lot of money in the bank. There's often, if it's a good deal, you can find good money for it.
So where's a good resource for the people to be able to discover or really go deep on those subjects?
So I always, when I'm talking with somebody who's brand new, I always say, have you gone talk to a hard money lender? Go talk to a hard money lender in your area. Talk to your little title company closer, your rep for title company. Say, hey, who's a good private money investor here that you would put me in touch with? Or who's a good hard money lender to talk to? Really, go to your local real estate investment club. It's one that's based on education, not one that's just focused on pitching you stuff every week. Go talk to a local real estate club and start talking to people, because they'll usually rotate through differences between private money or hard money lending and stuff like that. But go hang out. As always, you can jump on YouTube and podcast and type in hard money versus private money and go from there.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you give a person attempting to get where you are within real estate and your real estate journey about balancing business and life?
Well, let's just go ahead and get it straight. There is not truly a work-life balance. We as entrepreneurs are all control freaks, okay? You're going to have ebbs and flows. So there's going to be times you're going to be more in the business and other times more in the family and life. I will tell you this. If you want to do something with a family, plan it. Put it on the calendar. Don't wait to schedule something, a vacation, go ahead and schedule it so that you fill in around it. Otherwise, if it's not on the calendar, I'm going to fill it with work. And I think a lot of us control freaks will do the same thing. So get your wife, kids involved as best you can. Share what's going on. Maybe you need to give your wife a shut up check. If she's griping at you or your husband's griping at you, first you just give them a shut up check. Say, hey, this came from my real estate investing. Go have fun for the day. But that's the big thing is just, understand there's going to be a period of learning. Talk with a wife, talk with your family. Say, hey, give me a year at this. If I'm not doing something at the end of the year, then you can be the Debbie Downer around my dreams.
Yeah, I've definitely been accused of being a workaholic, so I'm familiar with that entrepreneurial bug and just plowing ahead. So, control freak. All right. Next question I have for you is, if a person had minimal amounts of time, no money or experience, but they wanted to start and scale a business like yours, what would you recommend for them to do?
Wait a second. If they have no time, no money, no energy, how would they scale? You're not going to scale stuff. Okay. Yeah. No offense. But here's the great thing about what you can do with note investing that a lot of people don't realize. If you have a self-directed IRA, you can start small. You could buy a partial set of payments, you could buy a year of payments for 10 months of payments from an investor. You could start investing a little passively in some funds, stuff like that. Usually they're going to want 25, 50 grand as the minimum to get started, but that's something's better than nothing. There are small balance notes out there all across the country that can be great little investments for you to buy that are performing, or if you don't mind rolling your hands up a little bit, be non-performing. But the great thing that I love about the note business is that most of our heavy lifting, we're not going out and knocking on doors to collect mortgage payments. We put servicers in charge of that. If the borrowers won't pay the servicers, then we put it with the bulldogs or the attorneys, and they handle the foreclosure. So that's what I liked about notes, is that you don't have to be so hands-on picking out paint, carpet, and the management of the actual asset. You can do it remotely.
Nice. Scott, the last question I have for you is, what is the greatest coaching advice you could give to a new person about knowing their numbers? And so when I say knowing their numbers, I'm referring to KPIs, taxes, income, expenses, just general finance. What would you suggest a newer investor know about knowing their numbers?
That's the most important key. Every niche has its own set of numbers. If you're fixing and flipping, it's different from wholesaling. It's different from the note business. It's different from being an Airbnb. So do yourself a favor. Don't try to be a jack of all trades, because you'll never learn the business of trying to do 5 things at once. Okay. Focus on one niche and then educate yourself out of the heck of those numbers. Take a class, get you a mentor, find out who's doing what you want to be doing, and go talk to them. Most of the time, I find that the most successful people in a niche are the ones that are the most giving of their time. They don't want you to make the same mistake. They may share some strategy or same number. Do it. When it comes to numbers, learn about numbers, accounting, finance. Keith Cunningham is a mentor of mine that we like to keep track of, and he's one of the most brilliant people when it comes to numbers and running the business and spreadsheets and how to evaluate that stuff. So get trained, get educated, take a class and find a mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting educated is always going to be the best policy because it just helps you to avoid so many landmines. You're still going to fall into some holes along the way, but you just won't have catastrophic episodes or events that take place within your life if you get educated and get around the right group of people. So I think what you're saying is excellent, Scott. As we wrap things up, if you could share a personal development book or either a business book with the Moonlight audience.
Number one book we like to recommend is Think and Grow Rich, Outwitting the Devil. I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but it was written back in 1938 originally, but not released till about 2005. And Outwitting the Devil, written by Napoleon Hill, is a conversation with him and the devil. Talk about how the devil is so successful in keeping successful people from finding success. He puts obstacles in front of us. He gives us shiny objects, squirrel, you know what I mean? That cause us to drift. The most successful people are the ones that are the most dedicated to their craft and say no to things that are going to take them away from that stuff. The book was released in 2005 because Don Green, who's the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation and a friend of mine, actually came across the manual in Napoleon Hill's locker in Virginia in his office, gave the manuscript to Sharon Lechter, who's a co-author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Sharon took the manuscript, didn't change it up. She liked the conversation, understood that it wasn't released because Napoleon Hill's wife has thought people would think he was crazy and have a conversation with Satan. And so she didn't really rewrite it. She left the manuscript, but it would add, a paragraph at the end of each chapter of and how she thought Napoleon would answer that question or how he would think of it in today's world. Great book. I've probably given 100 copies of it away. And the most important thing is don't drift, be focused. Sometimes saying no is saying yes to your dreams.
Yeah, I love that focus there. And I love that thought is concentrate on one thing instead of jumping from thing to thing to thing, which will really divert you and dilute you from being the highest version of yourself. You want to stay focused on one thing. So I'll definitely have to add that to the wish list. Scott, we want to thank you for coming on to the show, sharing your experience all the way back from being laid off to starting a mortgage company, working at Chili's, and then getting some traction, getting started within the note investing world, and sharing up-to-date strategies as to what's working today. If someone listening decided that they wanted to reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, if you want your higher returns versus your baby back ribs, you can reach out to me really easy by going to weclosenotes.com. That's the main website that we host everything on our classes, our investings, our AI clone as well too for you there. So weclosenotes.com. And if you want to pick my brain, you can always go to my calendar at talkwithscottcarson.com and book a phone call with me. I'm always glad to talk with you, answer any questions that you might have to help point you in the right direction. But you have to do us one important thing. You're listening to the show. Eric is doing a kick-ass job. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and you make sure you leave him a 5-star review as well. Not 4 stars, definitely not 3. 5 or nothing, baby.
That's
but
right.
Do that. We as podcasters love to hear from our audience. So do that for Eric. Do that for me. And you'll definitely add a little light to his day.
All right, Scott, thanks for the plug there. And Scott, once again, thanks for coming out to the show. We'd love to have you back anytime.
Glad to be here, man. Thanks.